coming up next on the schedule? Because it is almost go time.
Yeah,
Yep.
so up next is the Indie Comic Creators panel. Three of our guests are here, and Mog Park, I'm pretty sure it's like 7 or 8 a.m. where she's at. So she might be popping in a little later, but I've got three amazing indie creators queued up in the green
All right.
room. So
So we'll hand it over to
exactly
you, and
11.
so you guys have a good day, and see you on the 5th of February if you guys are interested in hearing more about us cryptid people.
Bye,
Take
guys.
care, guys.
Bye. All right, everyone. That was Cryptid Crunch doing a special episode. Amy Yazbek, the founder of the John Ritter Foundation for Aortic Health, which is the organization that we are supporting this weekend with the Multiverse FunRaiser, mentioned that her favorite cryptid is the Kappa, which is a Japanese cryptid who has a bowl of water on his head, and you have to try to get him to tip the water out to defeat him, which was super fascinating. Amy Yazbek might or might not pop in. So, when the most hilarious woman you've ever spoken to suddenly appears, don't be too awestruck. She's a person just like us. She's real fun to talk to. So make sure you ask her or any of my amazing guests on this Indie Comic Creators panel any questions you want in the comments. I'm going to pop them up on screen and we'll do some quick introductions. So I'm just going to go in the order left to right on my screen. So don't take that as any sort of favoritism because all three of the folks in the green room right now are amazing. All right, Dre, how you doing?
Crayle, it's good to see you, my friend. How have you been?
I have been pretty good. It's like my personal life, my family and friends are amazing. My body is like a rotting flesh prison that hates me. So
I agree. I'm in that bracket myself.
exactly. So Dre of Brutal Planet Comics. I'm just gonna do this one at a time instead of having everybody go around and freeze about when they are and aren't introducing their body of work. I'm gonna put a little graphic I made about you on the
Ooh.
screen, and you can tell me about your work, where to find it real quick. We'll cover it again at the end of the episode. And yeah, introduce yourself and say exactly what you do for your comic. Are you the writer, the inker, the illustrator, multiple, etc.?
Absolutely. What's going on, everybody? I'm Dre, the Brute Daniels. I am the owner of Brutal Planet Comics, and I am the head writer, director, editor, and producer of Trouble, The Rhythm Within. I do everything except the art because I am all thumbs. But other than that, you can get my comics at spinwiz.com or the Spinwiz app and just type in Trouble or search Trouble. Or if you want personalized versions of them with signatures or whatever special messages, you can hit me up on any of my social media, and I can definitely just mail you some copies, the whole issues. So far, I've produced 7 issues of the series, and I'm about to hopefully finish producing issue number 8. And yeah, so this series is finally coming to an end, thank goodness, because I've been burning the midnight oil for years. But it's a very exciting series. It's all about the power of music, and it beckons the question: what would happen if you got a different superpower based on the genre of music you listen to? And it goes into the psychological, mental, physical, and sometimes stereotypical versions of what we view music to be and how it affects us mentally. So it's a very interesting series, and I enjoyed writing it.
Yeah, I love listening to you talk about it. It's on my to purchase list. I swear I'm just catching up. I know so many creatives. Like I was talking to someone recently about how I don't go to bookstores anymore
Yeah.
because I have so many author friends now where it's like as soon as I have the money, I got to go buy something from somebody I know. And I mean, not to say that creators I don't know are any less, but I mean, there's just something a little bit more cool about being like, hey, I know this guy. So
that's always a great feeling.
Yeah. I hope you don't mind sharing the screen with Mr. Rob Multari, Wolfpack for life. He sent me this amazing Nightwolf hoodie. I've been posting pictures wearing it.
For some reason, my volume dropped off. I'm going to try and back out, come back in.
Okay, well, we'll do Tim's intro. Cool, yeah, we'll do Tim's intro and just let yourself back in. All right, Tim. Rob decided to screw up my whole left to right plan, so you have to save the show now.
I am ready to
save the show.
I am ready to save the show. How's my audio, Crayle?
Actually, I can hear you pretty well. Over in the comments, if any of y'all are having any trouble, definitely let us know. And real quick, Ryan Permission says Wolfpack for life. I'm sure he'll come back around.
Hey, Ryan.
Rob, always technical problems. You know Ryan, don't you, Timothy?
I do. He's a good guy.
Oh, yeah.
I know Dre, too. Hey, it's good to see you, man.
I know, Tim. It's been a minute, big brother. How you been feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. I want to congratulate you. And first of all, I want to start off with thank you so much to Crayle and Dre, too, for both of what you do for the indie comic scene. And guys like me, I really appreciate it a lot. And the truth is, we need people like you, and we need what you are doing. And that is not lost on me. And I just wanted to say thank you. I'm grateful.
Tim, you're one of the best in the game. You ain't got to thank me, big dog.
You're very sweet. You're very sweet. But, you know, the truth is, and actually Dre and I have talked about this before, and Crayle and I touched on it, which is, you know, the thing that's hard for us as creators, I think one of them is how do we reach our target audience and how do we connect is how I put it. And, you know, one of the problems that I have, and I think that some of us creators have, is that we tend to overlook the important things. By important things, I mean, it's reaching out and things like this. And it's equally as important to reach out to podcasters and readers and other creators. That's just as important as it is to be making the next story.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I could not agree more. Absolutely correct.
Yeah, I wouldn't know about lots of indie projects if I weren't in the podcast scene. Like,
yeah. And look, I'll be honest with you. Yeah, Ryan, I'm looking forward to that. He's looking
forward to seeing Timothy in a few weeks on Nerdy Projects. I will be reading comments for anybody who's listening to the audio only. But you know, when guests want to respond right away, just. Yeah,
well, I've been really lucky, and you know, I've had sort of a blessed year, and I'm so grateful to you guys. And one of the things that I'm going to offer this to both of you right now, because you know, I'm starting to get a little traction with my YouTube channel, right? And how this started was, as you might know, we sort of write songs to accompany the stories that we put out, and they started kind of performing, right? People seem to like them, and then that turned into how can I. Let me say this the right way. I wanted to create a show not too different from what you guys are doing in that it has a little bit of content and maybe give something back. And what I try to do is I interview the other creatives and we talk about ours is a top 11 list and we talk about our favorite things. And then at the end, of course, generally that person has maybe a Kickstarter or a website, or maybe it's some of them are music guests too, but something that they want to try and promote. And it occurred to me that for the level that I'm at, which is, you know, I'm not into the big leagues like, you know, some of the folks that we're going to meet here today, but I've got to try to give a little something back myself, because the indie creator community and the podcasters too have really been great to me. And it almost seems selfish if I don't try to do something back. Maybe not selfish if you follow me, but I have enough people follow me now to where they might say something like, hey, who's Dre? Who's Crayle? And I should be putting that out into the world, you know, because, you know, when I started, it was, you know, I had my first Kickstarter. It's 2.5 years ago now. That was for the Hunchback book, Crayle. That was the Chronicles Volume 1. And it was pretty well received, right? But it was only, looking back, I was all happy. You know, it was, what was it, $1,500 or $2,000 we raised, and it was 60 some customers. And I thought I was doing great because, of course, it was my first one. Well,
I mean,
now
that is great, but
It's
I
still a
know.
good run. All the
Thank
same,
you.
Tim. That's still a good run, man.
Thank you. Thank you. And where I was going with it was now that book just got picked up by Antarctic. It's coming out in February.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
just for my birthday. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. My 30th birthday, Antarctic Press picked up something by one of my favorite authors.
Yeah. I wanted to say if it wouldn't have been for you, it never would have came out at all. And I've got to make sure that I remain grateful for that and to remember those things, because the people who help, particularly the ones that back the Kickstarters, thank you. If it wasn't for them, that book might never have been made at all. And, you know, to see them getting published, this is the fourth one. It might be the fifth, you know. So like I say, I'm having a pretty good year. The material's very well received and getting good reviews and so forth. And like I say, now my goal is, you know, you see, and now Rob's going to be up here in a minute and we're going to ask him some questions. Okay. But, you know, you see some of these guys that hit, you know, my next goal is 200. And that's going to be for our next one coming out, which we'll talk about that in a moment, if you like. But the, you know, you got these guys, they do, you know, 300 backers in these whopper numbers. Well, that's now the level that I strive for. And how we try to do it is, number one, I hope it's okay to say, you know, when we sit down at the drawing board, we try to make the best product. And Dre knows this one. We look at Image books, we look at DC books, we look at Marvel books, and we say, how can we make a book that looks as good, if not better than that? And, you know, we go through design drafts and, you know, professional lettering and, you know, the best artists we can find. And of course, we're going to ask Rob this. I'm sure he'll have a lot to say about this. But it's 2023. The reality is, Kickstarter is very crowded, and that's putting it mildly. We've got to make sure that we create not only something that's from our hearts, and I think we can all feel that, but something that will rival, if not surpass, the other products that are out there. That's not putting anybody down, you understand. I respect what everyone's doing, but we just have to try and stick out somehow, or our book's not going to get noticed. And
That's correct.
Yeah. And so what we've tried to do, and as most of you know, it's not necessarily an exclusive partnership, but I have a very good friendship with a fellow by the name of Erwin Arosa. He's one of the, in my opinion, one of the foremost indie artists out there today. Actually, you can see him right there on the hunchback behind me. You see that guy? It's the black and white version. But so I have a new book coming out with Erwin. And I think that, you know, we're wanting to try new things, right? And when something happens that's a little different, you have to, what I call, lean into it. And somehow, accidentally, I've sort of become known as this science fiction fella. And that is a good thing and a bad thing. And what I mean by a bad thing, I'll talk about that first. I'm not necessarily a hero type of book. My books tend to be, there's many characters, but there's a lot of female characters, and they tend to not really have powers. They're kind of like trying to figure out what to do as they go. And, you know, we have male characters too, but there's never any X-ray vision or anything like that. But there's a lot of robots and whatnot, you see, it's the future. So we said, hey, how do we embrace the sci-fi? How do we embrace the weirdness? And our new title is a cryptid book, and it's called Call of the Cryptid. It's entirely illustrated by Erwin Arosa. And I sometimes say to people, if you liked books like The Hunchback, and if you liked Lost at Sea, you're going to be blown away by the cryptid book. And if you like monsters and you like weird scenarios, and it's sort of framed along the lines of maybe like the X-Files or the Twilight Zone, the situations are weird. And the premise is, after an alien encounter, a young girl encounters she gains the ability to communicate with cryptids. And basically the deal is, each issue, it's a 4-issue series. It's going to be 96 pages. The first one's almost done. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate
Ryan
you
says,
a lot, man.
Ryan
He's
says,
the best.
"Is this the Timothy hour?" Because he's rocking it. Yeah.
I'm excited to be here. I hope you can probably tell. It's, you know, full disclosure, Crayle's one of my favorite people. I was really,
oh my God.
I was excited to be invited, and I'm just glad to be here. But
see, I don't mind Tim running it, because I had him on my show. When he gets passionate, he gets to rolling. So I'm like, go on, Tim.
I get excited.
Preach, brother,
I
preach.
get excited. And so that's my new title. And, you know, we take our time. I think we're about this first issue is going to be 28 pages, and I think we're on page 22 right now. I told Dre this before. I don't do the Kickstarters to raise the money to make my project. I get too nervous to do that because, you know, things happen. So when you see my books on Kickstarter, it's what we call in the can, or at least the art's done and it maybe 60% of the lettering, something like. In other words, it's almost to the finish line already, because, you know, let's be honest, things happen. People get divorced, people move. You know, sometimes you're dependent on your artist, your designer, your letterer, and you don't want to tell your backers, oh, hey, there's a 6-month delay. Or I had to learn this. There's creators out there that have a year and a half. I just had one. It was a year and a half, and I actually even know the fella, and I wanted to tell him, hey, man, I won't reveal here the guy. He's a nice guy. And like I say, I understand why. But I don't think you can do that to your customers, or maybe they might not come back.
I mean,
and he's
are
absolutely
those
right about that.
warnings on all the platforms too that are like, hey, like, you know, the platform is going to do its best to connect the creator with the customer. But I mean, there are some risks. Hey, Tim, real quick, I'm going to put this info up just like I did for Dre, because I don't want to show any favoritism here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you tell me, for your comics, so do you do the writing, the art, the inking? Everybody knows you do the promotion. You promote the heck out of Earth Dog Studios.
Thank you for saying. My name's Timothy Fling. I'm a writer from York, Pennsylvania. My whole life, I wanted to be a writer, and I was what you would call a short story writer. And I never gained any traction at all with writing short stories. Of course, that's a different path, right? Like you submit to magazines and you try and get into anthologies and things. And this is about 2015 or so, 16, hard to believe that's 7 years already. A friend of mine said to me, hey, you ought to try getting some of these illustrated, you know, like a sort of what they might call a graphic novel. Because they, you know, the stories aren't necessarily too comic-y necessarily. Like, I love comics, but I get it that my stories aren't really, like, they're a little bit weird, right? And they tend to be very sci-fi. They're definitely more along the lines of, you know, like a Twilight Zone episode. And I said, sure, man, I'll give it a go. And, you know, I wrote that first book. It's about a robot detective team called Socket. And to be honest with you, that was not very well received. I was new, and, you know, it was, you know, we're learning, right? We learn as we go, and there isn't any kind of college or anything for comics. You have to just sort of jump in the water and start swimming. So I put out the first one, actually there's 3 issues of that. And when we got to the 3rd one, we set it down and we said, and by the way, I didn't know about Kickstarter yet. That's coming up. And the first book that we made outside of the publisher, I wanted to make it ourselves. It was they're science fiction short stories and collected into an anthology format. And the setting was called The Water Wars. And basically what it did, it showed what happened to regular human people after this cataclysmic event. And in those days, what you do is you print the books yourself and you take them to conventions. And, you know, I was giving them out in those days, just, you know, please notice my book. And that was the first issue was called Water Wars 2288. And almost right away, I started doing better than the other books, and definitely better than my short stories. And nobody told me to stop. So we made number 2. And right around in there, I was having some trading cards designed. And what they were little robots. Like the one guy, he's like lifting this giant weight, doing the cool things that robots do. And it was for the Socket trading card series. And I met a fella by the name of Erwin Arosa. And right away, I was blown away by his art. And I was telling Dre this before. I spent many years as a musician. I'm a bassist, if you're interested in that kind of thing. And I noticed that when you form a creative team, it's a little bit like a band. And by the way, Rob will have something to say about this. He's a musician as well.
Yeah. And I brought Rob up on the screen. He'll introduce himself when Timothy finishes up his thought. But continue what you were saying about being a musician. Okay. I just
So in short,
you had Rob in the corner.
Yeah. In short, I was going to say it's a little bit like when you're in bands and when you meet that person that it clicks and you go, oh, this is my songwriting partner. You know, you get that Lennon McCartney, you know, type of vibe. And when I started pairing up with Erwin, we clicked right away. And our first book that we made was called The Hunchback of Theological Quadrant 19. And there's another couple short stories in there too. But we put it on Kickstarter, and right away it had a what I call a favorable critical response. And ever since then, we've worked together in some way on every book that I've done. I consider him he's my partner. And by the way, we're great friends. We're great friends. And by the way, to our friends on the other side of the globe, Happy New Year. It's today.
Right. Well, Rob, I'm gonna do your intro as soon as we get through some of our guest comments, our guests out in the internet sphere. Skylar Productions says, sounds like a book for me, talking about Call of the Cryptid. If you are just tuning in, Willow Skylar, Keisha Acuff, and Johnny, our network owner, do a show called Cryptid Crunch on Back of the Cereal Box. You gotta check it out.
Yeah,
you gotta check it out.
Yeah, if you're a cryptid fan, you're gonna dig this one. Each issue will feature a different cryptid, and like I don't want to give too many spoilers or anything away because there's a couple of twists in it, but I will say it's not what you think.
Right. And John B. Pica says, hey, didn't we review Lost at Sea on Back Issue Breakfast Club? We absolutely did. That's another great show we do. If you want us to review your comic, get in touch with me or Johnny, message Back of the Cereal Box on any of our socials and be like, hey, I've got this comic I want you to check out. I had one sent to me last week too that I really want to check out from another indie creator over at I don't want to say the name wrong or anything, and we got to get to Rob, but it's a real privilege to work with creators like you is what I'm getting at. I'm so excited about getting to review stuff, like it helps people that I enjoy comics. That's amazing. So anyway, joining us down on the bottom of the screen is Rob Multari of Lone Wolf Comics.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the invite. Hi, guys.
Hey, Rob.
Yeah, so I'm Rob Multari. I'm the creator of Nightwolf and the spinoff series Snowpaw. Nightwolf is about a young man who finds out that he's born a werewolf, gets thrown into a supernatural war against demons, witches, vampires, other werewolves. And then Snowpaw, the spinoff series, is about Nightwolf's mentor, but 200 years in the past during her origin story in the 19th century Scotland.
All right. And are you the writer, artist, inker? You're the writer.
So I'm the writer, also letterer, graphic designer. I lay the book out, and do pretty much everything except for the illustration and colors. Much like Timothy.
Right.
Well, Rob, I didn't know you were a letterer, Rob. That's impressive.
I do, yeah. So I'm a graphic and web designer for my full-time job. So for me, being able to play in the print media it's second nature, but it's also more fun because I get to do more things with it than like I normally get to. For example, with like my trade paperback, when I designed the cover, I got to play with that die cut.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So like that's stuff that I
really
do
cool
for myself that I don't get to play with at work.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
I wish I thought of that.
By the way, I picked up your last book, Rob. I'm about halfway through it. It's really good.
Nice.
Yeah, it's cool. I think I'll just make a quick comment. One thing that Rob does very well, he has a nice sense of character development with the characters. In particular, and I thought this was a bold decision, the Scottish accent. Right? And by the way, I say that because I like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Tell us more. I was gonna say I like characters when we call it our characters talk a little funny.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about how you made that decision and also how you learned it?
Yeah. So this kind of goes back to Chris Claremont is a big influence on my writing, and as well as like he's my favorite X-Men writer. In all the books that he's done for like the X family. And that was, for me growing up in the 80s and 90s, his run on the X-Men have really like heavily influenced me. Still today, I think it's the best, story run for them as well. But so he did a lot of that with like the Irish and Scottish, so I think the way he wrote a lot of that also kind of like, it's how I read it and how it sounds. It made sense to me being a dyslexic. Like I was actually able to kind of like, oddly enough, figure out that because I could say it as it is phonetically and sounds like what they're saying. So to me, that makes sense. But yeah, so for that, I always had been a big fan of his and Wolfsbane in the New Mutants, and then X Factor later on, and Excalibur when she jumped to the different teams. Had always been one of my favorite characters, but I wanted to see more of her. Like, I wanted to see more character development from her, because she always seemed to be that timid, little girl that they kind of like always had like as a side character, never really a main focus. Even when they did kind of give her a power boost, she still was like a side act and never kind of really grew into her own. So I think that's kind of like where Snowpaw first came from, was out of that love for her and wanting to see her be a bigger character. Which was funny because she, with Snowpaw being such the character that she is, even in Nightwolf, because, she's a secondary character there, she's so, out there and everybody loves her. So that's what spawned her spinoff series. And so I guess it kind of really came to fruition, like what I wanted to see. And, that carried over with the Scottish accent, and, being able to write for a Scottish character for me is fun, because like, even if like a word that I never seen written before, I have to sound it out. And like, I kind of have a conversation with myself in the accent to be like, okay, this is how I think it sounds when I'm writing it.
I thought you did a good job with that, and it's consistent too. Like if they said it that way in the first panel, they say it that way in the 23rd panel, which that's hard. A lot of people miss that.
Yeah. I had to push my my editor to even recognize that too. But I'm like, if I missed it, we need to make sure that we go back and fix it. And like sometimes even my editor missed it, and I'm like, when I'm doing a reread or like have my wife is my like spell checker. Because of my dyslexia, I don't want to send it to like my editor, like, in my dyslexic class.
What, you mind if I ask who's your editor now, if you don't mind discussing?
So for Snowpaw, my editor is Katrina Rotes.
Oh, I know Katrina. Yeah.
Yep.
Sure. Cool. Yeah, she's real nice.
John B. Pica says, I love it when creators are inspired by what other creators don't do. And, sometimes you need to fill a creative void. That's true. And Andre Echeverria says, Nightwolf is a phenomenal book. The art and story are great. Great character development. I recommend it to my friends. Hey, if you're just joining us, this is the Multiverse FunRaiser, sponsored by Back of the Cereal Box and the Cereal Box Network. We are raising funds for the John Ritter Foundation for Aortic Health, which is a very important cause. Many people are now able to self-advocate, or family members are able to advocate for their loved ones who go to the hospital with chest pain, making sure that more than just like, oh, well, it's probably a heart attack gets checked, and it saves lives. Okay, because now more and more people know that aortic dissection is a possible cause of some of that chest pain and chest problems that are happening, and people can make sure that their doctors are checking them for that. It's really great. Please donate. Details at www.themultiversefun.com. So fundraiser without the D.com. Meanwhile, if you're just tuning in, this is the Indie Comics Creator Panel. We've got Dre of Brutal Planet Comics, Rob Multaria of Lone Wolf Comics, and Timothy B. Fling of Earth Dog Studios. I want to know, what are some of the pros and cons of being in the indie comics section, like publishing somewhat independently, working with smaller, the people who actually put your physical product out, those companies. I just forgot that. Distribution. There we go. Working with smaller distribution groups. Let's try to go Dre, Rob, Timothy, because Tim already started. He's on top of it this morning.
As always.
I'm coffeeed up.
So that's actually a very good question there, Crayle. Like the pros, the pros are some of my favorite pros in the industry. Creative freedom is got to be the biggest pro, being in the indie sphere. You're not worried about, I gotta fit this particular narrative or this particular story and I have to connect it to somebody else's work, or the studio wants me to go a certain direction. I don't have to worry about any of that. I can just kick back, turn my brain on, and then just go. and be able to craft something that's beautiful that I can actually hold in my own hands and say that this is my magnum opus. This is my Citizen Kane. Like, you can sit there and say that. Another good pro is that you get to meet so many great people. You get to meet so many excellent people, because the indie sphere, like I've always said, and I've said to Tim actually before, it is the farmer's market. It is the farmer's market. We all come together. We all bring something different to the table. We all have something that to add. Some, like Tim has the musical background. Some of us have like myself, I have a martial arts background. There's a bunch of different backgrounds that come together that be able to help create something beautiful and to make it something with a collaboration. And the collaboration levels is like something that you'll never see anywhere else. And I think it's the greatest creative expression that can actually be done without it being hindered down on any level. Con, money. It's the money. Because usually, of course, if you're part of the big two, or heck, big three, if you want to consider Image in there as well, you got to fund everything yourself. Comics cost money. You gotta, like, even on a smaller scale. Let's just say, even if you're from a very small perspective, bare minimum, the art's going to cost you some money. That's going to cost you. Let's just say you did like me. I'm a one man show pretty much, minus my art. So I save myself a good amount of money, but nonetheless, production costs, printing costs, shipping costs, like these things can add up. And it was one person I spoke to, I guess a couple years ago now, who once said, if you're just starting in the indie sphere, you have to love the industry, because it's going to be a while before you go from red to black. It's going to be a little while. So that's one of the main cons, is financing. Financing is a big con. And something, Tim, I'm just still all Tim's bits this morning.
Go ahead.
Reaching the audiences that you're looking for.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough reaching your niche audience, because, like Tim had mentioned earlier, it's a lot going on. There's a lot of noise on Kickstarter. Everybody's dropping something. Then to have some ways somehow to find your work to stand out and to be like, hey, I'm interested in what Dre's doing. Let me grab that. That is tough. It's really tough, because let's face it, and the reality of the situation is we're not as big and don't have the production value. We don't have the distribution value as the big two. It's reality. That's just how it is. They got millions and billions of dollars to back them. It is what it is. And it's a huge ask. It's a huge ask for the paying customer to be like, hey, roll the dice on me. You have to put them in a particular situation, or attract them in such a certain way that they'll be like, hey, I'm going to pick Trouble over the new Batman. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to put yourself in a really, 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 really good position for the paying customer to be like, I want that over this. So I say that those aspects are the big pros and cons. Now I'll pass it to Rob before Tim goes on another preaching.
Sorry about that.
On Tim, it's pick on Tim day.
It's okay. It's okay.
I mean, yeah. So a lot of it's, I have the same pros and cons. So for pros for me, I get to follow my dream of being a writer. And I enjoy the not being kind of like stifled by like what a corporation thinks it should be. So being able to tell my story, still being able to do it. And then, for me, like, I didn't intend to run my own publishing company. And I don't really have an intent on publishing a lot of other things. It's mostly, I just want my stories to be out there. And that was for me, doing it myself, being able to do it myself, without any hindrance as far as like, outside forces, coming and telling me I can't. Or just saying, hey, we're not interested anymore. Let's cancel it. So for me, it's like, hey, I can do it myself, whatever. I'm going to keep doing it until people tell me they don't want it anymore, and that's another pro is people tell me they want it, so like have that validation that people will tell me they want to read it. They want more. They're waiting for more. They're like, come on, let's go. A funny pro and a con, I guess. One time I was at a comic convention, and a guy had just bought a couple of my books, and he bought basically all the ones that I had up to that time. And like the next issue probably wasn't coming out for another month or two. And he come up and he's like, "You son of a bee." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "It's so good. And you left me at a cliffhanger and you said the next book's not coming out for months." He's like, "You son of a bee." So like stuff like that, it's funny, but like, I that's going to the con side is time. Time is the biggest con for this because, for me, like I work a full-time job. I have a family. I'm running the kids all over their extracurriculars. I'm cooking dinner, which is nice because I work from home. So I'm able to kind of manage that. I'm not doing the commutes and all that stuff. So it saves me a little time. Also, like I don't get a lot of sleep because, when everybody else is sleeping, I'm busy, you know? So like, and, taking time away from, like right now, not particularly like doing this, but like even before I was doing this, I'm working on doing Kickstarter updates. Like, so like all morning I've been like doing stuff instead of like, spending it downstairs with the kids, cause I'm off of work. So this is my new other job. Right. So there's taking time away from things. Sometimes, it's a balancing act. You got to find the time to do what you can while not giving up everything. So that's definitely a big con. But, again, my kids, going back to the pros, my kids look up to the things that I do. They love that I, have my characters, my stories. And like now, like, I have this plushie that I'm putting out on Kickstarter right now. And my daughter is like, she wants this. And I'm like, you can't have it until it's over. So it's like, stuff like that, just being able to see the cool stuff that you can create, so yeah, it's just, like I said, time is the biggest con in this whole situation. The money is definitely a big thing, because that kind of also is like, okay, well, if you don't have enough money, you can't pay the artists, and then that gives, takes time away from that. So you got to make sure you have the money up front, give the artist, then let them, and then you're stuck with waiting for the artist. You have to account for their time, and, like Timothy said, life happens. So, for me, like that's working with 2 series, I've been trying to rotate them. So like while one's being worked on, the other one's being promoted and vice versa. And so that way I'm constantly putting something out and not driving myself nuts going, okay, when's the next page coming? And for me, like I do the same thing as Timothy does. I make sure that the book is completely 100%. Well, he doesn't do it 100%, but I make sure like it's print ready. I'm not going live until that thing is print ready. And I'm the letterer for Nightwolf. So like once I'm done with the letters, boom, I'm off to the races. I'm like, okay, let's go. Same with, but with Snowpaw, I have Dave Lentz, who's my letterer, just because I can't do everything. I don't have the time to do everything. So I thought that was something. With Nightwolf, I wrote most of the 12 issue story arc years ago. So I'm continually lettering it and also kind of updating it a little bit while I'm lettering it. Whereas like Snowpaw is fresh. I'm writing that on the fly and then giving it to the artist. So that's pretty much going to be as done can be, while I'm handing it off. So I felt comfortable giving that to Dave. But again, time, more people, more management,
Yeah. John Pica, our network owner, is also a creator, and he says, I'm 6 months behind on the League of Impossible, this issue number 2, for that very reason, gigs, jobs, and family. I own my business. I do handmade art, and I'm an editor, and editing, I work with one person at a time, and I can keep things fairly on track there. But time, like Rob was saying, like one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about using any tiny bit of platform I have together to help independent creators get the word out there is when you're the source of the art and your own marketer, it's like every time you spend on the business end takes time away from your art. Every time you spend making new art, you're not selling the art you already made. So that's one of the reasons we're like, hey, talk about your Kickstarters or whatever, because these creators, like, they need all the help they can get. Tim, what are your pros and cons?
I'll keep my answer a little brief because I sort of did mine first. But the pros in my case are that I'm fortunate enough to do what I really want to do. Like I mentioned in my first book, I sort of worked for the publisher, and things have to be a certain way, like Rob said, and it has to depict a certain mindset that they might have in mind for their customer, which is fine. I totally understand. But I'm kind of an unusual fella, so I wanted to lean into the weirdness and to embrace the odd characters, as we've seen with some of Rob's work. So the pros in my case are now I can fully do what I want to do. I would have to agree again with Rob. The con for me is time. Probably saw in one of my Facebook statuses there, like, I can't stop now. There's no time. And there's kind of a famous saying that says something like, time is greater than money. And what they mean by that is that you run out of money, well, you can go and you can make some more money. But when we're out of time, So, I try to make my goals at the beginning of the year to hit certain goals. And I wouldn't say I'm the fastest creator. I'm what, Crayle, 3 books? I guess it's 4 books a year now I put out.
I mean, I'm impressed with how fast it comes out because the quality is so high.
You see, Crayle, you gotta remember, Tim, you gotta take everything you say with a grain of salt. You hear what he said right there? I'm not the fastest creator, but you're dropping 4 a year.
Yeah, I was gonna
That's
say.
crazy.
Is that good?
Yeah. That's one a quarter.
That's amazing.
Thanks for saying that. When you sometimes look, and by the way, I really admire the prolific creators, and I've been lucky enough to work with a couple of them. But you see people, some of these guys, they put out, as I mentioned earlier, look, I'm a small potatoes guy. Let's not kid each other. I'm still relatively early on my journey. But you see some of these bigger cats, and I mean like guys like Russell Nolte and Pat Shand, and man, they're dropping a book every month, and it's what they're, we only got today. Ryan's right. That's why they call it the present. So I guess what I'd like to do, and boy, Crayle, I think I mentioned to you once that my book, this cryptid book that I'm pitching, it's almost 2 years in the cooker here. Like when you talk about script and art and layout and design, and it takes a long time till that sucker crosses the finish line. And I'm a fan of a writer by the name of Paul Chadwick. He wrote a series called Concrete in the late 90s. Anybody remember Concrete by any chance? Yeah, it's a really good series. And what he said was that great achievements don't necessarily come from one giant revelation. They tend to be the smaller guy who took one small step every day for a long time. And, when they talk about guys that climbed Mount Everest, the most successful ones were the ones that went the slowest, and they took the smallest steps, and that's how they got there. And they weren't the fastest, but they've stuck the flag on the top of that mountain. So I guess that's what. Yeah. Hey, thanks, John. Man, I tell you, the cryptid book is a little bit like I don't want to exaggerate too much, but if you liked the sort of weird science fiction that you saw in Hunchback and the sort of oddball characters that you saw in Lost at Sea, you're going to dig Call of the Cryptid. It's weird. It's weird. And it has the feeling, like I say, of sort of, it's like an old school sci-fi where there's a couple of twists, and every time you think you kind of know what's going on, it's like, wait, what? Like we're intentionally trying to make it so that it's fun to follow and kind of full of surprises.
Yeah, but, and Ryan Permison has a question for the panel. Favorite comic book movie and why?
Oh my.
That's a hard one.
Wow. That's heavy. Okay.
I can answer.
Ooh.
Go ahead.
Right.
I gotta think.
All right. So for me, this may not be the same for everybody, but for me, when the Avengers came out, that to me, I think, I remember feeling that build up until they all came together, and I had tingles. When the Avengers assembled for the first time, and I remember my boys were both young, and they were into superhero, well, still are, but when they were 4 and 2 when the movie came out, and so being able to share that experience with them, not only on just a bigger level, just as a dad and a comic book fan, it was a whole bunch of endorphins just shot in there, So for me, I think that was not only just because that was an achievement, that was unlocked, like I think for comic books itself, because that was the first big time that you saw all these characters together on screen. And and then being able, like I said, to just take that in as a comic book fan, as a dad, and just being able to just soak it all in. I still, like, when I hear the soundtrack, I'm like,
yeah, man.
Yeah, Ryan says the Avengers is a great film in general.
All right, I think I can go.
Go, Dre.
All right,
I want to hear what you say on this one, man.
Okay, so I think my favorite is still The Dark Knight. I think that is still my favorite comic book film. The impact it had on cinema, the impact it had on that film impacted video games, comics, and film, like all in one clean sweep. And I think the real life elements that it encapsulated, especially about real life consequences, about taking the fall for something that you didn't do. The idea that you're one bad day away from becoming a villain, like, it resonated with me so much. Like, I think I saw that movie about 10 times in the theaters. I spent all my money going to go see that movie. And you had the great performances by Heath Ledger and Christian Bale. And rest in peace, Heath Ledger. I that film still resonates with me. Like, it's on my Mount Rushmore of greatest films of all time. And my favorite character in the film was Two-Face. Two-Face was my favorite character in that film. Because I think at a point in my life when I was watching that film, I felt just like him. I knew exactly what he felt about trying to do the right thing, but having to do dirty things to try to get one over on people that are doing you wrong. But then you still get the short end of the stick, even when nobody listened to you. And I think that resonated with me down to this day. And I think that film has literally become a part of who I am. That's it. I got it. That's it.
That's personal. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, I was 99% inclined to agree with Rob here, but I don't want to, make it maybe less interesting, but because I agree with everything he said, and that was one for me that just really rang the bell. So, I'll go off to make it a little more compelling. Maybe I'll go a little off script here because I just watched it last night because it was such a good movie. I'll watch it again. It was Tom Hanks in Road to Perdition. Have you seen Road to Perdition?
Yeah, long time ago. Yeah. I think I was in college.
Good Lord, Tim, you going back, bruh.
Yeah, well, I'm a Tom Hanks fan. I like almost all the movies he's in, and of course I mention it for two reasons. Number one, because I just saw it again last night, and number two, to keep it something different than maybe what we all just said. It's a gangster film, is what it is, and it's based on the graphic novel by that's Max Allan Collins and Richard Pierce Rayner, I believe, and basically the story of an Irish Catholic gangster who his family gets killed and he has to seek revenge, and he's got his 12-year-old son, and he has to drag him along behind him. It's a great movie, man. If you haven't seen it, I'll recommend to the viewers, check out Road to Perdition. It's good. Tying a little bit more closely into what you think I might say, since Rob took Avengers, I'd say probably the first Iron Man.
That too is a good one. That's Robert Downey Jr., man. Like, I don't know if anybody can replace him as Iron Man at this point.
Right. I'd like to ask Dre. Could I ask Dre a quick question?
What you got, Tim?
Hey, man. So I liked what you said about the Dark Knight there. What are your thoughts on the Robert Pattinson, the most recent Batman? Did you like that one?
This is what I say, and a lot of people had come to me on droves when this was announced, I guess, because the movie came out last year. So I think it was announced in 2020. I believe it was announced in 2020 that Robert Pattinson was taking over, and everybody's like, what do you think? I'm like, my first initial was like, the Twilight guy? What are you kidding me? But then I took the time to look at some of his more grittier, dirty roles they've been doing in the indie sphere. And I'm like, okay, maybe this guy can be Batman. So when I went to go see the movie, I was able to go with an open mind. And I enjoyed that film. Was it perfect? God, no. But as far as his performances his performance was concerned, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed his take on a younger Bruce. My issue was that he was always Batman and never Bruce Wayne. Even when he was Bruce Wayne, he was still Batman because there was no
Yeah, there was
You
no
know,
duality
he
to
didn't.
it like they do in the comics or the
Yeah,
everything else. Yeah.
yeah, like he was still the same brooding. I'm like, okay, but I still enjoyed it. I enjoyed the film. I enjoyed the performances. I thought the film was very good until the third act. I thought the third act was hot garbage. That was the issue. The
Tell us a
whole
little bit. Tell me a little why you think that.
Sure. So in the third act, like honestly, like I know the movie is almost 3 hours long. We could have stopped this film right at the moment Riddler is captured. We could have stopped the movie right there. But they went on this third act about this bomb plot and drowning the city, and now we got to have explosions for no reason because we had 2 hours of grounded detective work. It was a noir film. We had grounded noir film for 2 hours and some change. I'm thoroughly enjoyed myself. I even took my wife with me. She enjoyed it, and she's not even in this stuff. She's like, "Oh, I like that." But then we just had to turn on action movie button. We just had to hit that switch for no reason. Bombs. Oh, we gotta get the mayor. The mayor's gonna be shot. I'm like, oh, for God's sake. I'm like the pacing went completely off the rails, and we gotta save the mayor, and then like we have Batman using what I'm still convinced that he shot Venom into himself. I am very convinced he shot Venom into himself at the end of that film. Nobody addressed it. Nobody cared. It was all very strange. And then we have the suit in the sunlight, and it looked really weird. And like the third act really like it didn't ruin the film by any means. It didn't ruin the film, but it really took away from it, in my opinion. But but the majority of the film I thoroughly enjoyed. Just the third act, we could have booted that. We could have got rid of that.
Y'all, Dre has a series called Brutal Rant on YouTube where he gives you his completely unfiltered opinions. You're an entertaining person to listen to, Dre.
Thank you, Crayle. I get myself in too much trouble.
You can probably sense that's why I asked him. I really did want to know what he thought.
See, Crayle, Tim trying to set me up. He trying to set me up. It's all good, though. It's all good. That's my brother right there. That's my brother.
Well,
I prefer somebody's honest opinion about something than just to kind of sell me like, snake oil,
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and the reason why I asked Dre, and one of the things that he does well on the rant is that, what's the right way to say this? Sometimes movies get a little bit of what I call hate, and you can tell that the person didn't really analyze it. And Dre analyzes it, and then he'll give you an unvarnished opinion, but he'll tell, and that's why I say, hey, it's why. What I want to know is why. And like the movie I thought it was really good. I thought they really kind of nailed the detective aspect of Batman.
Agreed.
I like the idea of the weird clues and the serial killer. It was scary enough. I also agree about the third act. It was a little too much.
Yep.
And I liked is it Zoe Kravitz?
Zoe Kravitz, yeah.
Yeah, she was great, I thought. Like sometimes the characters don't necessarily match or whatever, and people complain about that, but I thought she killed it. And
I didn't have a problem with her performance. A lot of people did, but I didn't really have a problem.
Yeah, I thought she was really good. And I'll tell you, I'm not one of those people who I sometimes don't like if somebody got their role because they had a famous mother and father.
Nepotism.
I think that I got one or two friends that are actors, and as you know, many friends that are screenwriters, and I think that everybody deserves a fair chance. And I think you might get a better performance out of somebody that's really hungry for it. But man, I'm not taking anything away from Zoe. I thought she nailed that one.
This is a really great conversation, but I have a really important question to ask for our viewers, so I'm cutting you off, all of you. Before I ask my really important question for our viewers, I do want to let you know about a creative project that I am working on with Rob. So one of the other podcasts that I'm a part of is called Cosplay Cafe. Twice a month on Fridays, we pick a theme, we have a guest, we do the whole thing in full costume. And February is all about Snowpaw and Nightwolf. We are doing a cosplay contest. So if you go to linktree.com/cosplay cafe podcast, any of the social media, any of the websites there, except for Kelly's author stuff and my Pokeball stuff, go find information about the Lone Wolf Comics cosplay contest, because the winners are going to have their face on an issue of either Snowpaw or Nightwolf. And then runner-ups are getting a ton of swag, including mystery boxes that may have hoodies like the one I was talking about earlier. But one of the most important questions I want to ask and make sure we have time for in the next 6 minutes is, what is your advice to people who are trying to get off the ground? They have an idea, but they need to physically create it and get it published.
All right. As brief as I possibly can, start writing, period. Just get the writing, get what's in your head on a piece of paper. The first thing that stops so many people is that they don't put it down. Once you put it down, it becomes real. And once it becomes real, you start pushing exactly where you need to be because you want to see your dream come to life. The first thing that stops you is you. Put it on the paper and let it all roll from there.
That's great advice.
That's a good
Who's
one.
next?
Tim, I'll go a few.
Okay.
So two things. One, save money, because if you're a writer, especially, or even if you're the artist, you're gonna have to pay somebody something somewhere, unless you're doing it all yourself. But then that means you lose time. But save money, because when you go, let's say you go to Kickstarter, you want to have stuff to show. So you want to have, you want to have artwork shown. You want to have character designs, and those are not free. And in popular belief, they are not going to do it for free either, because of a partnership, unless you are really good friends with these people. The other advice is start building your audience while you're doing it. So like as you're paying for this art, as you're getting these character designs, show it. Go to social media, blow it up all over the place. Start building your audience. Get emails on a list.
Those are all great advices. I'll just close this last one out by saying that one of the most important thing to do is one man's opinion here. Is tune everybody else out. You're going to get a lot of feedback, both solicited and unsolicited, and make something that you enjoy making. The audience will find it.
All right. That is great. If you're just tuning in, this is the Multiverse FunRaiser. We are supporting the John Ritter Foundation for Aortic Health, which is a great cause, and we'll play a little video about how to donate in a second. Each of my guests, I want you to real quick tell me, if you've got something you're crowdfunding right now, what platform is it on and what title does somebody search for? I'll have more details with links and things like that on the Multiverse FunRaiser social media coming out, so that you can just click. But for now, tell me what platform and what title do our listeners search for? Dre, you go first.
Okay, as of right this second, I don't have a Kickstarter running, but you can go to spinwiz.com or download the Spinwiz app. You can get my issue, Travel Within Part 1, for absolutely free. You can download it digital for free. I love everybody just getting their hands on it and checking out my work. You can, or if you're into all the solid prints and you want it for free as well, hit me up on any of those social media you see up there, at the Brute00 on everything, or hit me up on YouTube, Brutal Playing Comics, and just reach out to me. I would love to send anybody that wants signed copies. Holla at me. I would love to just have you all check out my work.
All right, Rob.
All right, so I do have a Kickstarter running right now for the Nightwolf Voodoo Doll plushie. It's a 12-inch plush. And also accompanying him on the Kickstarter is a connecting cover. It's a 5th anniversary of Nightwolf, connecting covers of issues 1 through 6. You could also get, if you wanted to get the standard covers, those are available. Other things throughout the campaign. So you can go to that. Short link for that is Lone Wolf Comics /plushie.
All right. Thank you so much. Tim, what, I know you just finished one out. Do you have another project coming up?
Mine's not live, but it is coming up. As you know, this week is fulfillment for the last one. So the books are coming out to shoot, so to speak. And the next one will be in March. That's Call of the Cryptid. That's our new title. You will not remember this encounter is the tagline. And then in May, we will see Water Wars 2288 Volume 5, which is actually already done. That's also going to turn up in Tales from the Collective with Travis Gibb. I think that's okay to say that. It's already been announced. And then roughly July, you're going to see Chronicles Volume 3, which if you've been following the Hunchback Lost at Sea books, there's more of that coming. So we look forward to bringing that to you this year.
All right. I want to thank all three of you so much for being on this panel. Y'all, if you reach out to any of them through their socials because you are trying to get published or whatever, at the very least, like, I don't want to make promises for other people, but they can at least point you in the right direction. Like, we're talking to three really great guys right now. They're busy, but like they've made time for me. So, you know, talk to other writers. That's my, as like a fiction editor, not quite in the comic book industry still, like, creatives help other creatives, okay? And we've got a wonderful interview coming up in a moment. This is the Multiverse FunRaiser. Everybody say one last goodbye and thank you. We got tons of comments that I didn't have time, mostly complimenting our guests, you know, that I didn't have time to put up on the screen. I'm going to roll our information about how to donate to the John Ritter Foundation for Aortic Health now, as soon as the icon for it loads, because there's nothing to click on right now. Tech, you know. Here we are.
Our charity partner for this year's Multiverse FunRaiser is the John Ritter Foundation for Aortic Health. They exist to spread awareness of aortic health and prevent unnecessary suffering through genetic research, widespread education, and radical advocacy. Simply click on the link at our website, www.themultiversefunraiser.com, that says donate here, and that will take you to our Just Giving link. All donations go directly to the John Ritter Foundation for Aortic Health. As a bonus, every $10 donation that you give enters you into our sweepstakes to win fantastic prizes. All information can be found at our website under giveaway. So thank you for watching and thank you for supporting.